Welcome back, WN out here, and I've let all the National Football League writers exhale, except for those guys from Philadelphia I tracked down after the Super Bowl. I took a little downtime. All the Hall of Fame voters went back to their corners to towel off. I ran into Ira Kaufman in my hotel. He was distraught about John Lynch not being able to get into the Hall of Fame, and we have the Talk of Fame that we run here each and every Sunday with our friends Ron Borges from Boston, as well as Clark Judge from the Fighting City of New York, and this man out of Dallas, Texas, where everybody has a gun. He is Rick Gosselin 9 out on Twitter, and a McCann Award winner, a Hall of Fame voter. He does radio. He's the inventor of the pre-draft thing that we all hate now, which is the mock draft. Was it called a mock draft, Goose, when you sort of... Did you create the mock draft? Am I giving you too much credit, or are you being humble? Like, what's going on?
Way too much credit. Yeah, the godfather of the whole thing is Joe Bucksbaum, who used to be at Pro Football Weekly, and he did all the mocks. And I got involved in the early '90s. I think Kuiper was involved for the late '80s, but it's far different from what I got involved with. I used to do 3 mock drafts. When I was doing the NFL for the morning news, the 2 Sundays before the NFL draft and then the day of the draft. Now they're putting out mock drafts in February, before even the combine. You can find some mock drafts from last fall. It's past the point of absurd because mock drafts are just guesses. You're throwing stuff against the wall, see what sticks.
Well, people used to tell you the truth back in the day, right? Like, I mean, there were a handful of guys like you, and obviously you're ins with Gil Brandt, who knew everyone, and your covering of the Cowboys before, during, and after they were America's team, right? I mean, before Jerry, all of that. There was some privileged information, and at that point, I don't want to say it was gamesmanship one way or another, but most people didn't mind sharing what they were thinking. The people in the game were more talkers and trying to create interest. Ernie Accorsi and Mel Kiper would sit together and talk about things, I'm sure 40 years ago, not believing it could ever become what it's become here in your lifetime, right?
Yeah. I had some teams that told me they considered me the 33rd draft board because I was the only guy in the league that talked to every team. I didn't watch any film. I wasn't a scout. I wasn't a personnel guru. So I talked to the people that did watch film, that did make calls in the draft room, that knew what a player looks like. And I built my draft boards, my mocks, based on what NFL people told me, not what I saw. If I was a scout, I certainly wouldn't be writing. So I trusted the opinions and the eyes of those people that did know. And they all talked to me because I became a common ground. And people knew that if they want to know where they have a certain quarterback or certain wide receiver, it was based on a league opinion where I rank them. So they get a pretty good feel for a guy who was in the draft board based on where he was on my board because I was talking to all 32 teams.
Goose, I had so many phone calls in my early part of before we even had football back here in '96. I was doing radio for 4 years, and Joe Bucksbaum would call in from New York, and he would say that Goose knows everything about what's going on down there in Dallas, right? I mean, he was quite the character, Joe. I mean,
he was the best.
And I know he's been memorialized. I mean, Eric Edholm wrote an incredible piece about him last year. A lot of people have taken a deep dive on who he was, and we've talked about him at length. But, I mean, I still hear his voice in my head, kind of like I hear the voice of John Stedman, when somebody makes an impression upon you like that, at that point in your life. It was just him and Kiper and our lads, right? We would always get that stuffed in there too, right?
Yeah, and I remember anytime people want to give me credit for this stuff, I always defer it to Joel. Because Joel was the guy. He was the guy that all got started. He was the most accurate guy going. He did watch film, but he also talked to the teams, and he was the godfather of the whole thing. And I used to go to the draft in New York every year, and I'd sit down with Joel before the first day. We sit down for about 15, 20 minutes talking about the draft and what he saw and what I saw, and I really enjoyed the visits with him. But you never saw him. He never went to pro days. You never saw him at the combine. He just worked out of his little apartment in New York. but his information was gold.
Well, if anybody's out there has never seen that, I'll pull that up and Google it up. Rick Gosselin can be found down in Dallas at Rick Gosselin 9 on Twitter. I'll go through the Hall of Fame and all that, but honestly, the reason I called you is, in your pursuits down there in Dallas, they stretch you off the Cowboys and off the NFL and into other things, and obviously the Mavericks are in the news, and we'll talk about that for a minute.
Right.
But Cashner, the Orioles go in on Cashner. Some thoughts about, I'm afraid of getting lost in his beard. Let's start with that between him and Weddle. But him coming in and taking the ball every fifth day here, desperate times, desperate measures. They didn't give him a ton of money. I guess part of that is it's sort of tamped down the expectations. I don't expect much out of Andrew Cashner here this year.
Well, he's going to give you innings, and that's what you want with, third, fourth, and fifth starters. With the problem that the Rangers had with him, too many walks, too few strikeouts. And if he was a better ratio there, I think they would have kept him, because this is a team that is desperate for starting pitching. After Hamels, they don't really have a 2, 3, 4, and 5 in place. But I thought Cashner would have been a good fit. But again, they had a problem with the walks and the lack of strikeouts. But he's the guy he'll take the ball every fifth day and he'll give you innings.
Well, he certainly's bounced around enough the last couple of years, and I guess the jury's out. No one else wanted to give him 2 years and that kind of money, so he'll wind up in the American League East. And I thought the same thing you did. I thought when a guy can't throw a strike, that really worries me. You know what I mean? Like, when you don't know where the ball's going, that's not a good place to be in the American League East in a bandbox ballpark here.
But this guy does give you innings. He somehow, some way finds a way to get out of the innings. And that's what you want from a back end of the rotation guy. Just give me 5 innings, give me 6 innings, get me to the bullpen. Try to keep it competitive so I can get to the bullpen. And that's what you're getting. You're getting a back of the rotation type guy. And some teams find those guys difficult to come up with.
Yeah, you talk about Texas. You who, right? You have to make that decision. You're going to give him that money, I wouldn't have given him that money, and the Orioles need pitching, quite frankly. I didn't see him as a great investment, and I don't know if that's going to turn out well for them.
Yeah, and again, he was an okay pitcher here, and he'll be an okay pitcher there.
Goose Gosselin joining us here. Let's get on to football here in the Hall of Fame. And I don't know the last time I had you on. I probably could go through my trail here, and it was a number of months ago. I guess it was October the last time I had you on. I think we talked about Ray Lewis in the future tense. Might have been one of the first conversations I had about it, because when I think of you, I think of Hall of Fame voting, and it's always something we discuss when we get together. The rest of the room and where they are, and Ed Reed next year, and all of that. I ran into Ira Kaufman. I don't mind saying he was disappointed John Lynch didn't get in. Obviously, with Reed coming and Palomalu coming, maybe he doesn't get in. I was a little shocked that that Dawkins was more well thought of than Lynch. I didn't know that about that room, but I guess there are times you go into that room and are a little surprised by what comes out of it, right?
Yeah, surprised and disappointed with this particular class. The voting board has gotten so young. With the demise of newspapers, a lot of the older guys with institutional knowledge have left. We've got a lot of young guys aboard now. It seems that we've adopted the latest is the greatest philosophy. Anybody with age was knocked out in the first cut. Joe Jacoby, Everson Walls, even John Lynch. If you had any kind of age, they weren't going to consider you. So we put in, it's the youngest class we've ever enshrined. 3 first-year guys, a second-year guy, and a third-year guy. And next year, you're talking about 3 potential first ballot Hall of Famers. Champ Bailey, Ed Reed, and Tony Gonzalez. And I think somebody did some research. There have been more first ballot Hall of Famers since the year 2000 than there were in the first 50 years of the Hall of Fame. We're seen to be in a rush. We want to enshrine guys now. And the sad thing is I'm on the senior committee, and I see all these guys that slide through the cracks, guys that aren't discussed, and wind up in the senior pool. Hall of Fame players that are in the senior pool. Right now, Nestor, I've got 66 all-decade players in the senior pool, and 58 have never been discussed. If you're an all-decade player, and you're considered one of the best players of your era, you deserve to be discussed in the context of where your career fits in history.
Give me a couple of your specific beefs. Because obviously Jerry Kramer this year, who I've had on Radio Row a million times, and I mean, if anybody wants to have some fun with Lombardi, go Google my chats with Jerry Kramer over the years on YouTube from the Super Bowls. It's incredible. I didn't visit with him this year, and then he got in, which kind of surprised me because, to your point, gone and forgotten, and a lot of the Curly Culps and the guys that we've seen go in the last 10, 12 years who played back in the 60s and 70s, that there's a place for that, and it's for guys like you to fly that flag, quite frankly, right?
Yeah, I made the presentation for Kramer, and essentially I said, look, no one in this room has ever seen Jerry Kramer play. I said, I saw him playing TV, and I'm one of the old guys in the room. I said, no one's ever seen this guy play, so trust the eyes of the people who did see him play. This Hall of Fame selection committee voted Jerry Kramer the best guard in the first half century of the NFL. I said, trust what they saw when they picked Jerry Kramer to that team and the 1960s All-Decade team. You didn't see him. Trust what our predecessors did. I think that's probably one of the reasons they got through. And he was a senior candidate. He wasn't competing for other spots.
Sure.
Now, other guys, I'll give you a classic case in Baltimore. Bobby Boyd, All-Decade corner. Played 9 seasons at 57 interceptions. That's as many as Everson Walls, more than Deion Sanders.
And by the way, they didn't throw the football in that era either.
No.
Right.
Never been discussed. He's never been discussed as a finalist. How can you be an All-Decade guy and rank in the top 15 all-time interceptions and never get discussed? I also presented Everson Walls, and part of the presentation for Walls is look at how we've treated corners. I said we only have 14 corners in the Hall of Fame. 3 of them got in as seniors. I said the number 1 all-time leading interceptor at corner, Dick Knight, Train Lane, took him 4 years to get in. Number 2, Ken Riley, 65 picks, never been discussed. Number 3, Dick LeBeau, 62 picks. He got in as a senior after 33 years. Number 4, Emmitt Thomas, 59 interceptions. He got in as a senior, 30 years of waiting. And then you get down to Everson Walls, Mel Blount, and Bobby Boyd. We don't treat the cornerback position like the cornerstone position that he is. We want to love stats. We want to put every passer, every runner, every receiver with stats, every pass rusher with sacks. But when it gets to stats for a cornerback, we completely disregard interceptions. And Bobby Boyd is one of the guys that paid that price.
Well, and if you're a box safety, too, if you weren't running around picking the ball like Ed Reed, you don't have stats there. Safeties, corners, punters, kickers, they've all been overlooked. I mean, I think the offensive line has been at least addressed, but Tony Baselli didn't get a sniff this year. And he certainly, on the longevity thing, there's a whole other argument about how long you had to do it to be Terrell Davis or whatever, right?
Now, the problem with safeties, that's another position. Kenny Easley, we finally put him in as a senior last year. That was the first safety we put in 20 years. And there are only 8 of those safeties, pure safeties, in the Hall of Fame. Now, when we get to safeties, look at Paul Krause. He's the all-time leader with 81 career interceptions. That's a record that will never be broken. It took him 14 years to get in. Because when he was up, they said, well, when you put the tape on, you can never find Paul Krause. He's so far back in center field, you don't see him on tape. He didn't make any tackles. And then you get to Steve Atwater up, who was a great box safety, who did make tackles. They said, where's his interceptions? So if a guy was played the true safety position at the back end, they say, where's his tackles? If he's a box safety, they say, where's his interceptions? They're always finding a nick with safeties. Now, fortunately for Ed Reed, he's got picks, he's got block kicks, he's got everything on his resume. And that's why I think he's probably the one slam dunk in the class next year, even more so than Bailey and Gonzalez. I mean, this guy, 65 career picks, the block kicks, he was a difference maker. But he's one of the few safeties that this committee will embrace because they love stats and he can give them stats.
Goose Gosselin joining us here from Dallas in the Morning News. McCann Award winner, Hall of Fame voter. You can find him at Rick Gosselin. That's 2 S's, ELIN, and the number 9 in Dallas. He's a great follow as well for all sorts of fun videos and pet things and crazy things in the world as well. Speaking of crazy things in the world here, I'm heading back out for the draft next week and the combine next week, and we get thousands of people out there now running around for the Underwear Olympics. Boy, this is an interesting offseason in a lot of ways, and here in Baltimore we have the double jeopardy of fans being disgruntled by the knee, lots of empty seats here, expectations, John Harbaugh having been here a decade, Joe Flacco having been here a decade, and now Ozzie Newsome, and you were going to talk about Ozzie Newsome as a Hall of Fame contributor later on. 23 years now, he's the only guy that's ever picked a football player here, Goose. It's amazing.
Yeah, he's the think tank they had with Shaq Harris and Eric DaCosta, Phil Savage. I mean, they had quite the think tank going here, and they had a lot of great football minds that knew what a player looks like. And when they came to a consensus in the building, it was the correct consensus. You know, the year they got Ray Lewis at the back end of the first round. You know, I always believe that no matter where the Ravens were drafting, a good player somehow, some way slid to Ozzie Newsome. You know, whether it's getting Todd Heap late or Ben Grubbs late or Chris McAllister at 10, I believe. You know, no matter where they were drafting, Ozzie Newsome was going to find a good player. And he's I consider him the best GM in the NFL right now. And now he's stepping away. I think that will be a bit of a hit. But again, you know, Eric DaCosta has been in the room every step of the way with Ozzie. He knows what a player looks like, so it won't be that big of a drop. But Ozzie was the best.
Well, the legacy of what's going to happen here, right, and how history is going to portray this, because you've already said you expect Reed to go in next year. That makes 3, right? And then Suggs could be, you know, not that far behind. Certainly the recruitment of the Shannon Sharps and the Rod Woodsons. Burke might go in before it's all over with, right? I don't think Bolden's going to go in, but it was also another acquisition. But as far as identifying and drafting talent, when it's all said and done, most guys don't get a chance to do it for 23 years anywhere, you know, whether maybe a Bill Polian or somebody like that. But then on that resume to say, well, why did he get to do it for 23 years? Well, there were 4 first-round Hall of Famers. There were 2 championships. There were, you know, Joe Flacco and all the Todd Heaps and the Adelis Thomases and the Bart Scotts and the people that they found, the Priest Holmes, that got rich in other ways later on in their careers in the Hall of Very Good, I would say. But, you know, 4 Hall of Famers during your tenure in drafting, there aren't a whole lot of people that's got that on their resume, Goose. Anybody.
And also put the hiring of John Harbaugh.
Sure.
That was stepping out. I mean, here's a guy who's a career special teams coach, coached defense 1 year. Even today, NFL teams are reluctant to hire special teams coaches. Disregard the fact that Bill Belichick's background was in special teams, Bill Cowher's background was in special teams, Marv Levy, Hall of Famer, his background in special teams. They haven't given a whole lot of credence to special teams coaches.
Yeah, yet, Dave Tope should have had a job 5 years ago, right? Like literally,
without
right?
question. Without question, he's better some of the hires. But the fact that Ozzie did hire John Harbaugh told you a lot about Ozzie Newsome. He found a coach, a motivator, a guy that can bring out the best of his team. And I think that stands right up there with some of the draft picks. But yeah, you draft 4 Hall of Famers. You got a pretty good draft record.
Boy, Cowboys had some fool's gold last year, right? I mean, and I know the old man's gone nuts, suing the league, suing Goodell, pissed at everybody about the running back who couldn't keep himself clean in the offseason. And, you know, the quarterback was a genius when he had a running back. And, you know, we're gonna knight the Jones family for drafting Prescott where they did. Boy, it falls apart quickly when you win 13, 14 games. I mean, Eagles are riding high right now, but it's not easy to do to come back and repeat that. And the Cowboys found that the hard way, and now they go into an offseason with some cap issues and wanting to keep some players that maybe they can or cannot afford, right?
Yeah, the key is Elliott. 2 years ago, I voted Elliott as Rookie of the Year and League MVP. The Cowboys were the top seed. They were 13-3. The reason they were able to play with a 4th-round draft pick rookie quarterback was Elliott. And when he got suspended last year, he was the only speed on that offense. They had no big plays. Every time they scored, they had to drive 10, 12, 14 plays to get it, and that really puts a toll on a quarterback. You have to play perfect. Getting Elliott back, I think you'll see more like the Prescott you saw 2 years ago. But this team does have issues, and now they're looking up at Philadelphia, which has 2 quarterbacks capable of winning a Super Bowl. Cowboys aren't sure they have one. And the Eagles got that great defense. The Eagles have 8 guys they roll in as pass rushers. The Cowboys have 1, DeMarcus Lawrence, and he could be a free agent if they don't franchise him. They need 2 or 3 more pass rushers. You win the game with quarterback and pass rush. They feel that they're okay with Prescott, but they need help at pass rush. And if you let Lawrence walk out the door, they need a lot of help with the pass rush.
Last thing for you, Goose. You're down there in Dallas, and I know waking up on Wednesday morning and into the news on Tuesday night, I've dealt with the Dallas Mavericks organization, as you know. My wife's donor was a huge Dirk Nowitzki fan and a Mavericks fan, and was dealt with very professionally. The story is quite illuminating, I would say, out of Dallas, and is to be believed and trusted and all that. And I tell you what, Mark Cuban had a thought about running for president and doing different things. Not to say that you can't, grab it and still run for president, because clearly what we've got in Pennsylvania Avenue would dictate that anybody can be president at this point. But in regard to the Mavericks and in regard to your community down there, it's a real hit for the Mavericks, right?
Now, 2 days ago, comes out that Cuban told the players we're going to tank. And the next day they come out with the sexual harassment, so there's problems on the court and off the court. Us three has since left the building. He was the focal point of the story. They had a Mavs.com beat writer who was fired because he had some alleged domestic abuse issues in his past. But yeah, this is a blow to Cuban. Cuban likes to have his thumb on the pulse, feet, and his finger in every pie. Yet he didn't. He claims he didn't know about this. It's a black mark for a franchise that's really, really struggling now. And I'm not. Again, Cuban he cleaned it up. He said the right things to SI, and he's doing all the right things. They're going to have a day where the entire building, including Cuban, is going to have sensitivity training. So he's doing all the right things after the fact. Before the fact and during the fact is when the Mavericks dropped the ball.
Hey, man, I know you'll be following the aftermath of all that. Hope to see you at the Combine or down the road at the draft or down the road at the owners' meetings, and I'm sure our paths will cross as well as your Talk of Fame airings here each and every Sunday, along with Clark Judge as well as Ron Borges. Always good to run into you and always great to talk some Hall of Fame. Hey, last thing for you. I just want to give you this. My buses are selling like hotcakes for this Ray Lewis thing. We're on our 4th bus. Everybody's going out there. Give a little plug for the Hall of Fame, because you've been going out there longer than I have. It was a very underwhelming place for a long time, Goose, and I don't think I'm being mean or anybody there would be too humble or egotistical about what it used to look like. I would go there and say, does anybody really care about this place 15 years ago? And now the infusion of money is going to make it Disney World. It's going to be a different Hall of Fame than if you went 5 years ago. I don't think there's any doubt about that, right?
No, you could spend a day in there. If you've been to Cooperstown, I like it. Cooperstown is like going to a church. The Pro Football Hall of Fame is like going to a circus. It's loud, it's colorful. Cooperstown is very laid back, very discreet, very soft.
It's a library. It's a library.
Right, exactly. And you go to Cooperstown, it's bang.
You walk through Cooperstown and you kind of want to whisper. You're like, hey, Goose,
exactly.
Did you see that game at Arlington that night? And when the Hall of Fame's not that way, because there's kids running around. There's video games. It's nuts. It's loud. Right. I agree with you.
But definitely you have to go to the bus room. That's the best room in the place.
Well, yeah, and maybe one day Art Modell will be there, Goose, huh?
Yeah, I haven't given up hope. Art belongs. I'm an Art backer on this.
All right. Well, that gets you off the phone quick with me. Either way, you get off the phone quick. But if you're not an Art backer, we might have a little publicity stunt up our sleeve with Ray Lewis this summer. Don't count me out. They might throw me out of the Hall of Fame, but as long as they throw Art in, I'm good. So I'll keep fighting for him, and you keep fighting for Joe Jacoby. Okay.
Have a great summer.
Hey, good having you on. Goose, Rick Gosselin, my man down in Dallas. Rick Gosselin 9 out on Twitter and the Talk of Fame Network and the Dallas Morning News and the Hall of Fame and all that good stuff. You can find me out in the BuyAToyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. The morning newspaper ships to your email inbox 7 a.m. each and every morning. It's all free of charge and powered up by Planet Fitness at PlanetFitness.com. It's $10 a month to join there. There's one right around the corner. Go see the folks at Planet Fitness. You'll be happy that you did. Last but never least, breaking news happens first on our WNST Tech Service. That's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And Dennis Kolatzis will be here on Thursday, driving you home from 3 until 5. It is the SSV on WNST. And it's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Ray Lewis trips on sale under the Road Trips tab at WNST.net. And let's see. We'll be at the Combine next week. We're going to be at the NFL owners meetings next month as well. Barry Trotz will be joining us on the evening of baseball opening day, which is March 29th on Thursday night. We are placing that with more details. We'll be swabbing for the Bone Marrow Registry and previewing the Stanley Cup playoffs with head coach Barry Trotz. Now over 1,500 games coached. between Nashville and D.C. Number 4 on the list, I believe. I think that's right. All right. Nasty at WNST.net, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.